Look down. Now look at the person next to you. Same feature, right in the middle of the chest. On every body, every size, every shape, every gender. Two small circles nobody asked for. Half the people reading this will never use theirs for anything. That's not an insult, it's a documented biological fact, and it took scientists a surprisingly long time to actually explain it. So let's explain it. Every human embryo starts as the exact same shape. For the first 6 weeks, before sex has even been decided, your body is already building a blueprint. Eyes, spine, the buds that will become arms and legs, and running down the chest, from armpit to groin, 2 ridges called the milk line. That line is where nipples form. It happens on schedule, in every embryo, at 6 weeks, no exceptions. Here's the part that matters. At 6 weeks, the gene that decides sex, called SRY, has barely switched on. The gonads are still raw, undecided tissue. They could become testes, they could become ovaries. Nothing has been chosen yet. And the nipples are already finished. Sex gets decided after the blueprint is already locked in. So every embryo, whatever it eventually becomes, walks out of that 6-week window carrying nipples. Later, hormones arrive and build everything that will actually differ between bodies. Testes or ovaries, internal ducts, external anatomy. The nipples were never part of that vote. They got built before the meeting even started. Go back further, because nipples themselves aren't as old as you'd think. The first mammals, the egg-laying ones, echidnas and platypuses, don't have nipples at all. They still make milk. It just leaks straight through patches of skin on the belly, and the babies lick it off the fur. No pipe, no spout, just a damp patch of skin doing an approximate job. Real nipples, a dedicated tube with a valve, show up later in the branch of mammals that gave up eggs for live birth. Somewhere around 160 million years ago, ordinary sweat glands on the belly of a small, egg-laying ancestor got repurposed. One of them thickened, folded inward, became a duct. That duct is the plumbing every mammal alive still uses. Cats, whales, elephants, you. The nipple was invented once. It has never been reinvented from scratch. It was only ever copied onto every mammal body built afterward, including the male ones. You'd expect every mammal to work this way, and most do. Almost every male mammal on this planet has nipples for exactly this reason. But not all of them. Look at a stallion. A male horse has no nipples at all. None. Look at a male rat. Also none. In those species, the embryo runs on a different clock. Testosterone shows up early enough to reach the nipple bud while it's still soft, undeveloped tissue, and it destroys it before birth ever happens. Timing is everything here. In a horse or a rat, the hormone arrives in time to cancel the order. In a human, it doesn't. Our nipples are built and locked into the blueprint days before testosterone is even in the room. So the rule isn't, males don't need nipples. The rule is closer to, whichever hormone shows up late loses the argument. In us, the hormone shows up late. That milk line I mentioned doesn't always disappear completely once the 2 nipples form. Most of it fades, but not always all of it. Roughly 1 person in 18 is born with an extra nipple somewhere along that old line, usually a faint mark below the main one, sometimes mistaken for a mole for an entire lifetime. Mark Wahlberg has one, Harry Styles has one, Chandler Bing, in Friends, was written to have a 3rd nipple as a running joke, based on exactly this fact. It isn't a mutation, It's a leftover doorway on a hallway that mostly closed, but apparently not everywhere. Here's the detail that turns this from a curiosity into something genuinely stranger. Male nipples aren't just decorations sitting on the surface. The tissue underneath is a small, dormant version of a mammary gland, and under the right hormonal flood, it can occasionally switch on. Extreme starvation, followed by refeeding, can spike a hormone called prolactin, hard enough that men have produced small amounts of milk. Doctors documented this in survivors of famine and in prisoners of war in the 20th century. Certain medications that raise prolactin can trigger the same response in men who are otherwise completely healthy. The plumbing was never removed. It was only ever switched off. It happens even earlier than starvation or medication, actually. About a third of newborn babies, boys included, leak a few drops of milk in the first days after birth. Doctors have an old name for it: witch's milk. It has nothing to do with witches. It's the baby's own gland tissue responding to the mother's hormones, still circulating in its blood right up until birth. It fades on its own within weeks in every baby who has it, whether that baby grows up male or female. That gland tissue doesn't vanish once puberty ends either. It just sits there, small, mostly quiet, doing nothing for decades. Which is why men can get breast cancer. Rare. Roughly 1 case in every 100 breast cancer diagnoses. But real. Because the actual equipment for a tumor to grow inside is genuinely present. Nobody warns men to check for a lump because nobody thinks of that spot as a gland. It clearly is one. So why hasn't evolution deleted this? 2 circles of tissue, doing nothing useful, on half the population for the entire history of the species. Because deleting it would cost more than keeping it. Nipples form in week 6, when the embryo is barely bigger than a grain of rice, before the hormonal systems that could even tell male tissue from female tissue are running yet. To remove them in males only, evolution would need a separate instruction, one that arrives earlier than the sex hormones themselves arrive, just to cancel 2 structures that use almost no energy and cause almost no harm. That's expensive machinery built to solve a problem that barely exists in the first place. Natural selection doesn't reward tidiness. It rewards whatever survives long enough to reproduce. A chest with 2 unused nipples on it reproduces exactly as well as a chest without them. So nothing ever pushed back against keeping them. No pressure, no cost, no reason to change course. The blueprint stayed. Next time someone calls male nipples pointless, you can give them the more accurate version. They aren't a mistake. They're a decision that got made too early to be reversed. A piece of anatomy finished before your body even knew which kind of body it was going to become. You are not broken. You are just built from a shared plan.